Hello, I'm the War Nerd. So quite recently, welcome to the channel, yada yada yada, like and subscribe, all that sort of stuff. I did a video fairly recently talking about my experience teaching, like I'm almost done a year in now. And I did say in that video previously that I'd do a second part where I talked specifically about teaching IT and just some of the methods that I found that have helped with that. So in this video I want to go over some methods that I've used for teaching web development coding, and I'm going to be showing the resources that I've created, just the slide decks and exercises, and I thought that would be quite useful for anybody who's also on this journey of teaching coding, because teaching coding is actually quite a difficult thing, because you need to combine a variety of skills, right? And you have to learn it quite fast to get some sort of result. Obviously, in the BTEC you are assessed, you have an assignment, that usually takes the form of some sort of written assignment, the theory, but then there's also the practical. So programming especially, I think, is very key to that. Now the unit out resources I'm going to show are web development based, so it's a combination of design and coding. But yeah, I thought I'll just chat a little bit about how I approach that, teaching the web development unit on the BTEC Level 3 course, and Level 2 as well, but I'll just show the Level 3. I did do a bit on Level 1 too, but again, I think it would be more useful to show from the higher level, really. In terms of leveling, actually, which means like when you adapt the language, or there are certain methods for that too. But I'll probably just talk about that when I show the slides that I did for the Level 3 groups, and talk about some of the resources I created for that. Anyway, I'm going to do that now. Okay, so this is basically where I work, the learning platform we have. Unit 6, the website development, is the name of the unit on the BTEC course, and this is how I modularized the learning. So obviously on the BTEC you have certain learning aims that they have to learn. It is a curriculum informed by a curriculum, so you have to make sure that all of those learning aims are met, because that's the criteria that's measured in the assignment work. So if I go through this, I'll just show you some of how I approach this. So obviously I've got an intro task here, and principles of web development, which is more or less the introduction to the formal curriculum that I had to cover. And then we've got links here, obviously, to W3 Schools, MDN, pretty much standard documentation resources. And I also provided some web video resources, so video resources I've done myself in the past, and then some interesting articles. But I'll try and get through this quite fast. I'm not going to spend hours going over each thing, but I think it'll be useful for anybody who wants to create their own resources for these type of courses. Just have a look at how somebody's done it from scratch. So this is the first. This is more like an introductory, almost like a what's called an informal assessment in teaching. So again, it's in a lot of ways this is sort of a weird way to approach it, because I'm sort of like, before we get into the basics, showing them some of the more complicated and more the potential things that you can do with web development. So looking into JavaScript libraries, for example. So I want them just to have a look at this, the Pix.js or Free.js, and then get them to try it out just for a session. So again, it's sort of like there's no expectation here, just showing them how to. As a setup tutorial, as a video tutorial. One of the hard things actually with coding is that you can't. I've got some example projects there of stuff I've worked on, and some other little visualizations that they can have a look at. So for example, this is, I don't know why that is. So it's just, YouTube does this annoying thing now where it thinks you're a bot if you're on a VPN, but anyway. So yeah, so this is some weird like sort of WebGL A-frame thing I did ages ago. So again, I'm just showing them that you can potentially do things like this where, you know, in this example, it's actually just generating some random primitives, applying random surfaces, but showing them that the coding can be creative, and I mean, that's almost a job role in itself now, creative coder. So showing them the sort of potential that you could, you know, of some of this technology. So again, just showing them the possibilities. This is something I worked on ages ago. It was like a whack-a-mole type game. So get the imaginations firing up a bit, you know, get the students excited about potentials of what you can actually do. This is more of a tech demo of this thing here, but yeah, again, it's just like a quick little introduction to possibilities. So that's like a data visualization app thing I did a while ago as well. But the main meat of where the actual learning begins is in, obviously, some slides, which helps just to, well, it's the actual delivery, right? It's the theory side and making sure that that's interesting. So yeah, this is the first slide on that. Ask them some questions, because part of being a teacher is you need to, again, you need to get feedback and sort of be able to assess. Constant assessment is the name of the game, really, because you need to figure out, do I need to make things harder or do I need to simplify things? So one of the easiest ways to do that first is just ascertain where everybody's already at, because everyone comes in at a different level, even at level 3. So yeah, I'm just asking them basically to create a Word document now. It's a quick exercise, and you know, seeing do they know the differences between the back end and front end. Making sure that they understand the difference between designing and development. So design is, you know, actually creating the look of the site, but it's not actually doing the code, whereas development is the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, whatever you're using for your tech stack. So introducing them to terminology. Now with coding, especially with web development as well, there's so much you can get in there. So I do try and just focus on the fundamentals, because and obviously most BTEC curriculums are like this. You've got to think about web audiences, so who are you designing for, and obviously that's a huge part of design, so include slides on that. Get them to think about, you know, what is wired, who's the audience for that. A little bit on design principles. This could have been better, it's probably a bit too text heavy, but yeah, just making sure that they understand those principles, because that is part of the first assignment that they do actually as well. Get all that. And then, yeah, quite quickly into actually just get them to do it, apply those principles to something practical. So making it so that it's something around something they like. So choose a website used frequently, and then getting them to analyze it and think about the responsiveness. You know, how does the design work? Get them to try and look into the technical overview as well. So that's like the introduction. That's the first week. You know, so it's a bit of a just terminology introduction. It's yeah, and then I've also split designing from the actual coding stuff. We did also do quite a bit of time on web games, because the way that our actual final assignment combined games and web into one, so you had to do like a bit of a website, but you also had to do a HTML5 game. So I'll dive into all this. Most of these will probably take about 10 minutes for me to explain each one, so this should probably end up being about half an hour long. Anyway, let's go into this. So designing. So one main slide deck, I wanted to keep it short and snappy. I wanted to keep this part of the actual course fairly practical based, really, to be honest. That's the best way to learn coding, rather than me just getting up there and, you know, lecturing them like a absent-minded professor. I think it's best just to dive into it. So we'll look at the slides. Obviously I provided a bunch of code examples and other things and like starting points. Let's have a quick look at this. So we get to the slideshow. Current slide, that's the one. Current slide. So yeah, just keeping the design consistent as well. Again, just like a bit of prompting again, you know, what do you understand web design to mean? What are the methods you know about to design a website, and then get them to write short documents. So again, just starting them off a little written exercise. We look at the UI a little bit, user experience, and also define the difference between those two terms. Now, this is something I wasn't too sure about doing, but I did try it out anyway, and I'm not sure if it exactly landed, but I think for the higher level students, they will have got something out of this. But it's a case study on UX from Jamie Stantonian, who's one of my friends down in London, and is a very experienced UX guy, basically, in the tech sector. So again, we just did a little bit of an exploration of this. Now, I'm not expecting any of them at this point to actually understand it completely, but looking at real life service examples is worthwhile. It's too text heavy, but the expectation I'm putting on them there is that they'll, if they have that additional interest, they'll take the time to look into it. And it's also introducing them to the concept of a user journey, right? So this is quite high level, really. This is an actual case study of the Imperial War Museum that Jamie did. So again, it's a higher level, but it's more introducing them to that. And that it is too text heavy, to be honest, on this one. But like I said, it's more. I've put it in there just more to introduce them to the idea that you're with UX, for example, it's cross-disciplinary. So you're not just drawing on. You're drawing a little bit of everything: psychology, design ideas, color theory, all sorts of things. So that's hence why I put this link here to Daniel Kahneman's book Thinking Fast and Slow, and this is all basically copied from Jamie's blog again. So yeah, it's a bit of a, and then yeah, just show them a quick like visual, nice visual diagrams, or even memes or sometimes can help to describe, visualize what's going on. So we've got a very clear distinction there between somebody who's just a designer and somebody who's a UX specialist, right? And it gives them a bit of the context and the different median salaries you could expect. And some also just like a bit of showing the different types of thinking and focusing that those different specialists would have. You've got visual design, and then you've got HCI, human-centered design, for the UX specialist. And then yeah, obviously going into wireframing and pointing them to some tools for that. And then again, getting them into practicals fairly fast. So they got a test portfolio, they've got to create a site. So it gets them to think about how are you actually going to design for an audience, introduces them to Figma, and then yeah, making sure that they include the email. So that was that one. So in a way, it was quite a heavy like introduction again, but I did want to push this group quite a lot, and they did end up getting fairly good results overall. At this point, they will have been into their first assignment. The first assignment, which was just pretty much analyze a web stack, you know, like a website basically. Now onto the real meat. So obviously there's a lot more here because we spent quite a lot of time on this as well. Probably about, I think it was overall, it would have been about a month really. So this is getting into the real meat of it. So, you know, HTML, CSS, layout, doing layouts, using Bootstrap, and then we had a final fun little activity at the end of it. So again, lots of resourcing here, code examples. Just go into the slides because again that just provides a full context of what we actually covered. In IT teaching, you do again, like, it's really important that you get all the learning styles because what you are dealing with ultimately is a really cross-disciplinary subject. It's very important to make sure that you teach them enough so that they can get by for the assignment. Like I said, get those fundamentals in place. So this is our introduction to HTML and CSS really, which is the place to start for anybody who wants to learn web coding. There is no point running into JavaScript. This is a video, it's about 10 minutes long, so they can refer back to that. It's one I did a while ago, which does just that. And then I prompt them again, you know, so again, more prompting of questions, making sure they are learning this stuff and some of it's being retained. Explanation of HTML, you know, pretty much common tags, that sort of thing. Explaining what a tag is. Some of them did actually struggle with this. Most of them got on with it pretty well, but a few of them really did struggle with just the way that you structure HTML there. Like, they had some examples where they made mistakes at first, but usually, obviously, I do observe them when I'm doing all this. But again, yeah, just some highlighted tags just to give some sort of idea of like how to do HTML with attributes and such. And then yeah, straight into like a practical exercise. Like, look at what I've just shown you. Now try and create a mock-up of how that, how you'd structure that with HTML. So yeah, focus on accuracy and not at this point making it look pretty or anything, just pure HTML. Very quick little video on HTML again, just to reinforce that. And then CSS, I explain what CSS is. I sort of introduce them to concepts of classes, IDs, selectors, that sort of thing. Again, none of which they're going to understand straight away, but it's vital that you introduce the box model, obviously border box model, all the other principles of CSS. Another little quick video, spelling it out with, you know, this is how you create a circle, which is a good starting point. And then one of the first little few funny things here. So. What is it too late to try? So like sort of meme type thing. Let him cook! I said let him cook! Just trying to show them sort of like the magic of what you can do with all these languages combined. And this was actually really cool. So the solar system, one of our students actually got this working, which is pretty impressive. So there's like, I mean, it's not really, well, it's sort of a short tutorial. It's a great little learning access to the channel. So he was when we did this exercise, this student was actually able within, I think, 1 or 2 sessions to actually get it working. Because the exercise, which I'd start off with, was just like something, not like about formatting text, you know, it's a bit bland, it's a bit boring. So trying to get them just to take whatever they've picked up from there and just try and make some shapes do something interesting. So we've got like all sorts of interesting results in this, like from everyone doing sort of like Modigliani style artwork things to like obviously doing circles, flags. But it allows them a quite nice gentle introduction to like exploring how it works. Yeah, so I gave them a little optional task to do to create like a website for an album. That was sort of optional, you know, thinking about keep target audiences again. And then the next, that's an optional challenge too. I don't think any of them did that one, it's a bit too advanced, but it's if they wanted to. So again, it gives them the option. So if those who are struggling have got something to do, those who who can get through it really fast and might already be at a good level, it keeps them engaged as well, because they can go into 3D dice, so they can almost like go ahead of the others if they want to. So it leaves a bit of choice for them. That's just the slides for the video that I provided. This is quite a key bunch of slides. So this is, again, it's about like how do you do layouts in CSS. So this is very visually led because it has to be, really, because that's the medium of CSS, right? It's what it does. So just covering different methods for actually doing CSS layouts. You know, flexbox grid, CSS positioning, columns. And then have a little bit of a refresher on border box, margin and padding. Yeah, then obviously prompt them in the lesson so that you can see if they remembered it. Some different diagrams for positioning, just to get relative and absolute in the heads. Floats, where's it appropriate to use floats and how to use them. So a lot of this is, again, it's the theory of how to use CSS basically. How to create columns, flexbox. So yeah, flexbox and grid, and just sort of trying to introduce them to the advantages of both, and, you know, again, trying to connect visually with the code to how that actually looks on screen. A lot of which, again, you have to do by doing, but a lot of it's just repetition. CSS, a few little memes there just to keep it not too dry. Same thing again, basically. Media queries is more advanced, but again, just introducing them to that in case they need that. How I eventually got them to do this, because it would be, well, I didn't get them to do it. They could actually use whatever method they want for the web design, but I did want to get in using Bootstrap and Tailwind quite early on, because obviously Bootstrap does provide shortcuts for, you know, doing the responsive layout. There's nothing wrong with using it, so introduce them to those two with the appropriate links they can click on. Gave them some code which had examples of grid and flexbox. Got them to think about trying to create a layout, and then introduce them to Web Developer Inspector tools. And we did a code review after that. So we did do code reviews, regular code reviews as well, I should say that. So whilst we're doing this, we're also getting stuff up on screen and actually showing, you know, doing a sort of code review of each one. This is the slides that are specifically on using Bootstrap. And again, scaffolding in what their assignment task is. We're doing a test version of the actual assignment task before the assignment's been handed out. So again, just CS, you know, what is Bootstrap? A bit of a refresher, really. Why is it good to use? How you link it up. A bit of quick code there. It's pretty easy to follow. You just copy and paste it if you want, really. Looking at some examples of Bootstrap components. Now, one of the obviously drawbacks with Bootstrap is you do get a lot of markup created, but I mean, it's also easy to use, so that's good. But again, they can just copy and paste these components as they need them, and then, you know, they're going to go further into actually like customizing them as well. Some examples, just the common layouts. Yada yada yada. I probably could have benefited with some visuals, but some tips on using Bootstrap, and then yeah, give them a task. And this is like basically a test task for a made-up game. Just generate the artwork with AI, give them a task, use the components. We spent quite a lot of time doing that as well. So here's the test assets they got, and then it's up to them to design. It's like a sort of mood board I've given them basically for this. Yeah, quite funny. Obviously made it sort of funny as well for Soul Reaver. And then yeah, just give them some content as well. So they got a starting point, and again, it's like a test version of what they ultimately made in their assignment, right? So again, it's like scaffolding in a bit of exercise before the actual assignment. This is just a funny little end of term, I think it's half term thing we did. So one of the teachers called Toby, so we just got him to try and design a nice card for him to say thank you. He's like their course lead. Again, exploratory task. So we've done all that theory, just give him a bit of a fun thing to do. So yeah, like, you know, mix it up a bit. So JavaScript. Now, they didn't really need to know, they didn't need to know loads, but I actually did want to dive into this quite a lot because they already had been developing their programming skills with the other lecturer in Python, but I wanted to also show how a little bit. Now, this is quite theory heavy because it's, you know, you can't really teach JavaScript without teaching the fundamental theory. So this is the first sessions, really. Again, a little quick explainer video just to introduce them to what JS is. A little bit of a prompt. What do you understand about JavaScript? Just to write a little bit on the history of it. A bit of a funny little music video thing. Motivational. So sometimes I do plunk these in there. So make sure that you've got like a you don't want it to be overly long because then it takes up too much time in the session. But yeah, we look at JavaScript, variables, types, conditions, DOM. Trying to get stuff up and running. So yeah, a little bit about different types of variable, var, let, and const. Now, they're probably not going to get all this straight away, but it is good to let them know the fundamentals of var's not the greatest to use. Let, you can reassign it, and constant cannot be reassigned. Now the scope, hoisting, and usage, they're unlikely to understand, but again, it's just good to introduce them to that. It's important, really. Yeah, and then some code examples, how to declare, bit of a video reinforcing that. And again, like a lot of this is just pretty much going into the different types, number, boolean, string, yada yada yada. The fact that it's a dynamic language, yada yada yada. So a lot of this is just like the hardcore theory. Conditional checks. So yeah, code examples, a little bit of funny memes of the word. So also showing ternaries, so the different ways you can format code as well. Now these can obviously get really messy if you're not careful with them, but they can be a nice little time saver, and if you understand what it means, though in some ways it could be less readable. There's always that argument, but there's JavaScript in it. Switch statements, so just how that's a bit different from if and else. Loops, just what that is. And again, just some little jokes. For loop, nested for loops, DOM and DOM manipulation. A little bit of a jokey thing. So obviously they're not going to get all of this, but I try and reinforce all the visuals that are on screen, because you have to get them to understand what the DOM is for them to be good web developers anyway. So you just hope that it will slowly sink in. But you don't, at this stage, I'm just giving them info dumping the theory, really. And then, yeah, straight into a practical after that. Again, you need to reinforce with practical exercises quite a lot. So try to get them to create a word guessing game. So it's challenging them, really. And this is not any formal assignment. It's just more to see if they can step up to that level of challenge, I guess. Provided them an example of a roadmap that I did in an actual job, just to give them an example of some, when you're actually in this job doing it. So at this point I was in this job for a year and a half, what are you going to be expected to do? And then just carrying on. So again, because there's so much to cover in JavaScript, we just went over this over 2 sessions. So it was all covered, and so they can just dip their toes in, really. So yeah, looking at the history, that's what we looked at before. It's a bit of a refresher. Had a little bit of a motivational with Primagarian, who's good to YouTube, just about how he went from being a meth addict and a porn addict to working at Netflix. Commenting, functions, arrays, objects, all that sort of thing. So yeah, so put that on because that was quite interesting. I think it just inspires the students, hopefully. Again, because this group were quite jokey in a good way. That helped just create atmosphere and rapport in the class as well. Yeah, just probably a bit too much writing there, but again, I'm just going over why the importance of commenting is, what a function is, which is pretty essential, obviously. How do you create a function? What does that do? That's a pretty good example. The add AB, it's a good one. Arrow functions. Again, I'm not expecting any of them to get this. Some of them might, but yeah. Get the question, I do think they can be useful. Arithmetic, how do you use that? Again, a few little videos that they can, because, wow, guess what project we did, obviously. Fantastic what to do, but it's a good one to start off with. It's a classic for a reason. So again, that just prompts them a little, gives us some ideas for a little bit of inspiration. And then yeah, just that. Just how, you know, here's a function to create a random number, blah blah blah. Yeah, and I also tried to embed in like just inspiring figures from STEM. So again, just trying to create also motivational type content within the actual slides. We looked at Ramanujan, who was a genius mathematician from India. It's a good story. There's also a film made about him. So again, it's just trying to show that anybody can create, can do this really. What an array is, again, not going into methods, but just if we can get into their heads the fact that 0 to 4 is array, it's 5 array items and the 0 indexing, or 0 indexing beginning at 0, that's going to help them just to get that in their head a bit better. And then yeah, array method examples, but I'm not expecting any of them at this point to actually understand how it works. And then yeah, just what an object is in JS, blah blah blah. And then yeah, just got them to create a calendar. So again, all that theory, which is nothing until you actually build something with it. And they all did pretty well with this. I mean, obviously they're looking online, tutorials, that's the whole way you learn. A little bit of a meme there. Lots of links to tutorials as well, so they've got different starting points too. So they got like, I provided them with, you know, going all the way up to doing a scientific one, but some nice tutorials there. So they got a choice of stuff to choose from. And I gave them the optional homework if they wanted to, watching The Man in New Infinity, because I think it's just it's a good film, and again it's teaching them, embedding them the I guess like science is like just first of science really, to be honest. Alright, and then I'll be over with this soon. This is not far off done. I won't show the assignment stuff really. We did also, because part of what we were doing with combining the assignments was to do with web games. We used Develop for that because it's easy to write to HTML5 with it, and I'll just show you some of that. So yeah, like I said, this is sort of like cross-disciplinary games development units with a web. So I'm just here to define what a web game jam is. We got them to do like a little game jam. This is yeah, a little visual metaphor there. What factors you need to consider. Again, this is just a quick like little thing we did as a sort of entry into it. So again, no expectations, informal assessment type thing. Here a bunch of tools that they can use. Get them into teams. What his role is. Get them to do a glitched reality thing. And they did do it. They did create some weirdly interesting games for this. And then I like just like showed them some other music they could listen to. Probably get, if they wanted to, it was up to them.
Ready, one.
So again, just trying to introduce a bit of music, bit of creative background on that one, because that was quite an informal beginning to it. And then we looked at like Develop and just create just the basics of like creating environments. So I tried to get them to create a cyberpunk level. So you know, try and get them playing with that. Create a little planning document, create an environment. So I did an example as well. I showed them a time lapse of that. And there's also some video on like contemporary indie games and how those extra credits vid as well. And then you've got the little example map I made as well. So show them a little bit of an example so they've got something to work towards. Although this isn't perfect, but again, it's something I built out in about 2 hours or something, I guess. And the good thing with Develop is you get all these like pre-created assets. I mean, I've done some of the textures myself here, but again, it gives them something to work towards or inspire, I guess. We did a little bit on interactive fiction too, so just a bit on that because it was interesting because it's we did actually set quite a lot of time for this course, so again we did go off on quite a lot of random tangents just to keep it interesting for them. I don't want to keep it too too boring. So yeah, and then probably, I mean, a lot of that we did quite a lot of gameplay sessions, game sessions. We did things. So I will show actually briefly. So the assignment 1 was just like look at a website, and yeah, the actual website was to do with building the game, and that's about it really. Yeah, that was probably quite long, but again, it gives you a bit of an insight into how I've been teaching, specifically web dev for the BTEC. I hope any of that was interesting. Like I said, it's quite tough to actually teach coding because you've got to combine a bunch of disciplines and then get them to the stage where they can actually get something built within about 2 months of being taught it. So I think the trick is to get them practical early. Don't get too bogged down in theory. I mean, the main theory that was covered there was the JavaScript, from quite a high level. But again, I wasn't expecting all of that to go in. It was more just to expose them to that. And we don't get to do React or Vue or anything anyway. But obviously, it's more for their benefit because if they continue on to university, or especially if they go into industry, they're going to be on JavaScript to React as a fact if they're doing web development. So it's something they need to know. So hence, trying to give them the foundations in the actual theory of JS and HTML and CSS. Most of them get it in a certain amount of time at level 3, and often a few of them will have messed around with HTML a little bit in the past, but it's just getting them to understand, why things like standards are important and why there are certain ways of doing, achieving certain tasks, I guess, in coding. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I've already yabbered on for half an hour, so hope that was interesting. That's about it, really.